All right, guys, if you find yourself as confused about this Trumpflation that we're seeing as I am, is it good? Is it bad? Is the end near? I don't know. Let's bring Andy Hoffman on. He certainly has his thoughts on it. Andy, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing fine, and yes, I have plenty of thoughts. Where would you like me to start?
Well, you wrote today something financially and politically wicked this way comes, and let's dive into that. But let me first say that I don't even know what to think of Trump anymore because I saw a headline today that says Ted Cruz being considered for Attorney General. He may as well just bring George W. back from the dead and give him the AG spot. I'm
Right.
no
Well,
fan of Ted Cruz,
I'm
man.
not ready to say that he was part of the problem. Look, he's just a man with flaws, and I truly believe that while his initial run was likely ego-driven, I think he's certainly changed as a man and does have the nation's best interest at heart. The problem is that he is an insider. He's an admitted insider, not the same kind of insider, but again, as I put it, he is probably on a personal basis more leveraged to ultra low interest rates than anyone in the nation. I mean, this guy has highly leveraged high-end real estate properties, and he does have a history, the self-proclaimed king of debt of all kinds of bankruptcies in various businesses. So he is vulnerable. So if anyone thinks that there's any part of him that's going to drain the financial swamp, they've got another thing coming. And of course, we see rumors of Jamie Dimon, and of course the Steve Mnuchin guy from Goldman Sachs, and then of course all these other insiders. It's easy to want to believe that he's just going to be another guy. I don't think he's going to be. But that said, no one, and no one supported him more in their writings than me for getting elected. But it was really for the same reason I voted for Obama back in 2008, who I didn't know from a hole in the wall. I needed to get these neocons out. And this time it was even more dire. We needed to get the Clinton, let's call them liberals, out. I mean, these are some really bad people. And what I was writing today in my article and yesterday's article was that there is definitely forces out there that are subverting the nation right now. And thanks to WikiLeaks and a lot of other things, they are doing it pretty openly right now. They don't seem to care.
Yeah.
So I'm very fearful of that. As far as the Turning on Trump audio blog I did last week, as soon as he was in, I was thankful we don't have Hillary Clinton. But that said, there's not a single thing that he's proposed that he can do. Whether he wants to or not, it doesn't matter. There's no way you can have fist. I mean, you said, people want to know about this Trumpflation. It's the most ridiculous thing in the world. There is not a chance in a million years of having a giant fiscal stimulus program funded by debt. It's kind of like, he's got all these Reagan people coming into his cabinet, and, he wants to do supply side economics. Well, first of all, supply side economics was a massive failure. All it did was take the United States when it just got off the gold standard and had a pretty much free and clear credit card and started charging it up en masse with tax cuts and spending. And all it did was, it built up our national debt and reduced the level of real growth. And at the same time, once all these trade deals, which were brought into existence by all the lobbyists, came in, we lost all of our manufacturing base. And of course, the Fed started massively increasing the cost of living with their money printing. And here we are today. 20 trillion of debt on balance sheet, another 5 off balance sheet, tens of trillions of unfunded liabilities. We've lost our manufacturing base. We have no savings. We have the worst demographics imaginable. That was my article yesterday, probably my 10th article on demographics. It was called Horrible Demographics Ensure They Can't Win, et cetera, et cetera. And so the thought that you could start this, fiscal stimulus program now is ridiculous. Just what's happened in the last week alone. And again, these last to go markets like the Dow and paper gold kind of mask the fact that markets are crashing the whole world around. I mean, this was the biggest bond and currency crash. I mean, one on their own, just one in isolation is horrible. But we're talking bond and currency crash at the same time going on in the past week. Plus you have commodities like the most important one in the world, oil, all crashing. I mean, just in the last week alone, the market movements have ensured that global trade has crashed and that the United States economy is going to be much lower reported in the next coming months. And then now the Chinese are, as I predicted, dramatically devaluing the yuan. Today, the peg was the all-time lowest peg. So you're going to have more deflation export around the world, lower corporate earnings here, et cetera. But the Fed, we were talking about a few weeks ago or months, the Fed, they're going to raise rates, they're going to raise rates. Everyone's worried that it's because they're trying to intimate the economy's good. If they raise rates now, it's only because they're trying to catch up with the bond market, which did it for them. And the bond market is not doing it because the economy's getting better. As I said, it's just the last week alone, it's had a huge leg down. It's because it's scared of inflation, of all these things that can't happen. But there's a lot of reasons why rates are going up. Part of it is the fear of it has caused all these currencies to collapse. So all of the foreign central banks, starting with the Chinese, have been dramatically selling treasuries. And now with the lower currency rates, they all need to sell treasuries to get cash. So again, it's, as I said this weekend in my audio blog, it's a manipulation, idiocy, hubris conflagration going on right now. And yes, something wicked this way comes because the political and the economic and the social and monetary ramifications of all that are going on right now are worse than anything we've seen. So, I had said all year long, we won't get through this year without a cataclysmic financial event, and we've had several, but this is the biggest one. And the ramifications are going to make 2017 the worst economic year and likely political year that we've witnessed. I mean, look at all these referendums that are coming. It was definitely a Brexit times 10, and actually Trump used that term in one of his rallies at the end. So you're going to see the same thing happen in Italy, in France, in Germany, in Austria, Catalonia, Spain. That's just the ones that are on the docket for the next 12 months. So again, you're going to see the world is going to change like nothing you've ever seen before. Gold is soaring in all the currencies around the world, of course, here, because this is the center of the manipulation. And if you can get your hands on some right now, when in India they're running around, there's a cash ban. Now they're going to make ban cash in Australia. You can buy cash here. You can buy gold here at these ridiculously suppressed prices, and silver at even more suppressed prices. I can't even imagine what people could be waiting for to protect themselves right now.
Now, you mentioned the neocons, and you mentioned the powers that be sort of behind the scenes manipulating events to some degree. And I think maybe you're referring to Soros. That's what I'm getting at. My friend Wealth Watchman made me aware of the fact that if you want to Twitter the Trump campaign directly about the transition team and people in power, people they might be thinking about putting in power, it's the address is @transition2017. And I tweeted them just yesterday, Andy, to say, no neocons. Please, Mr. Trump, no neocons. If you want us to take your administration seriously, if you want to deliver on your promises, no neocons. If you guys want to reach out and give them your thoughts, I think it's @transition2017, which brings me to this newly found 60 Minutes video from at least a decade or more ago, Andy, of George Soros admitting his role in stealing wealth from Jews, working with the Nazis as the Jews were put into prison camps.
My understanding is that you went out with this protector of yours who swore that you were his adopted godson.
Yes.
Went out, in fact, and helped in the confiscation of property from the Jews.
That's right. Yes.
I mean, that sounds like an experience that would send lots of people to the psychiatric couch for many, many years. Was it difficult?
Not at all.
And here we have Soros manipulating events to this very day in this country, helping fund some of these ridiculous protests and the violence, people being bussed in from everywhere. One of the things I'd like to see Mr. Trump do is charge George Soros with treason. The point being that there are powers behind the scenes here that are going to help precipitate the collapse. That's my thought.
Right. Well, again, you know how I've been all along. I need proof of things. Well, I got proof now. Between the WikiLeaks and all the other disclosures, which, by the way, are only going to explode. This is the age of hacking, and this is the age of discontent, and it's also going to be the age of hatred against America. You're going to see these things out in the open. So when you see yesterday, it says Soros is holding, and it's not just him. He's not like the only guy. He's just one of the richer oligarchs. But he's holding a 3-day closed-door meeting with all people opposed to Trump. And he's even got like Nancy Pelosi and Elizabeth Warren. He's got actual political officials there plotting. And you see the kind of things that these, again, I was saying on a podcast this morning, I've always hated that word liberal because it kind of implies that there's a group of people that have this group think about all kinds of things. Because I thought, look, yeah, you have liberal thoughts on certain things, social policies, financial, but it's not. It's, the Republicans morphed into the neocons in this lust for power and destruction at the end of Bush's presidency. And throughout the Obama administration, this group, let's call them liberals, has morphed into something, I won't say uglier. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that whole 9/11 thing, and Patriot Act, that's the past administration. But this thing is almost like this global takeover and destruction of people all around the world, and it's very visible right now. And when you see the aftermath, we thought it was bad before the election with the mainstream media out there in Washington just attacking Trump and Republicans. Look at what's going on afterward. It is a sight to see. I mean, they are making him out to be a Hitler. He hasn't even done anything. He's just a private individual who's been a successful businessman, whether you like him or not. And they are sowing the seeds of discontent. We're talking about secession of California. I mean, good riddance. I mean, that is the focal point of this. It's like the capital of this. Like the neocons were their capital was Washington, D.C. Well, the liberals' capital is like California. And it's a pretty scary thing because there's going to be contention in this country at a time when the country's economy is in all-out collapse and the global economy is doing the same. So I really fear what's going to come ahead. And the one thing I do know is that hypermonetary inflation is guaranteed from the Fed and everyone else.
Okay.
It's happening right now.
Yeah. All right. Well, then let's circle back to this. Odds, I guess, are 94% that the Federal Reserve will hike rates in December. You're saying they have to raise rates because of what bonds are doing. Whether or not they should is another question.
Yes, when they were hitting gold all year, forget all year, the last 4 years, they're going to raise rates, and they never raised rates. It was always under the propaganda, aided by rigged economic data, which in and of itself is the worst that we've seen ever. I mean, it's the worst the United States has ever done. That's with the rigged data, but it's always like, the economy's getting better. They're going to have to raise rates, even though it's ridiculous. Raising rates from nothing is nothing to do with gold. There's no correlation between interest rates and gold over time. This is just in rigged markets what happened. But the point is, the reason that it's gone up now in the last week has nothing to do with any of that. Everyone knows the economy is getting worse, and anything Trump proposes not only is not good, people don't realize this yet, but it's not going to happen. It's going up. The rates hike odds are going up because they have to stay ahead of the curve. If rates, the 10-year rate has gone from 180 to 222 just in the past week. That's 41 basis points or 42. If they don't raise interest rates by a quarter point, they look like morons. Like, how can you? You have to stay with the curve, let alone ahead of it. And, they'll just raise by a quarter point. And it's going to be cataclysmic. It's not going to be good. The dollar will keep rising. It hit a 13-year high today. And again, for all those people in our sector particularly, so the dollar is going to crash. Look at what I've said for 3 years. Constantly. The dollar will soar and soar and soar. It will never, ever, ever, ever crash against the euro or the yen. The only reason it ever goes down against the yen is because people are unwinding carry trades. But ultimately, Japan is going to be the first world nation to have hyperinflation in the 21st century. And against the euro, there won't be a euro. Probably a year or two from now, there won't be a euro. People go to the dollar for liquidity. It has nothing to do with fundamentals, with debt, with trade flows. All that is bad for the U.S. Anytime there's uncertainty, people will go. They did go to treasuries, but now they're selling treasuries because they're terrified, which is very good for gold, good for Bitcoin, good for pretty much any alternative monetary asset. But they are definitely, if they're in cash, they're going to go to dollars out of fear of liquidity, which is killing currencies around the world. And it's going to make them sell treasuries more, and it's going to put more pressure on the Fed to monetize. So while they're going to be forced to raise interest rates by a measly quarter point this time around, which will only make these trends worse, ultimately, they're going to be forced to step up QE. And they may have to do QE with rising interest rates because if the bond vigilantes continue doing what they're doing, which they should, then rates are going to go up while they have the increased need to borrow and spend, to borrow and monetize. And that's before Trump's $1 trillion fiscal stimulus program. So again, they're in big trouble on all fronts. We're talking about the central bank's credibility is all but done. Their dry powder is really done. If the Fed announces that, I have my article all queued up for that day. Ding dong, the Fed is dead. That'll be the day that gold goes no offer. And it's all coming. Again, look at what Bitcoin is doing right now as the currencies collapse. That's exactly what gold and silver are going to do when the cartel's back is broken, and it will be broken. We didn't even talk about the cash ban going on in India or Australia, what they're talking about doing right now. That's only going to fuel people rushing out of paper currencies. This has nothing to do with the dollar versus other paper currencies. We're talking about people getting out of paper currencies. We didn't even talk about Banco Monte de Paschi. Remember, everyone said, they're going to get more funding later this year. And I said, there's not a chance in hell they're going to get funding. And sure enough, just yesterday, this is Italy's third biggest bank. They said, we're having trouble getting the funding. We're probably going to announce a €5 billion bail-in, which will, by the end of the year, which will set a massive precedent. And this is right before this Italian referendum, which in 3 weeks, or is it even 2 weeks now, December 4th, which all year I've guaranteed, as much as I guaranteed the Brexit and the Trump victory is going to fail. It's going to result in Matteo Renzi, who's the fourth prime minister, by the way, in Italy since the financial crisis, resigning. You're going to get the five-star movement is going to come in. They want to leave. First, they want to leave the euro currency. Then they want to leave the European Union. And then the same thing's going to happen in France. In fact, in France, Marine Le Pen of the National Front Party, who's running for president, already ahead in the polls, she may actually run unopposed because this moron Francois Hollande, sex scandal like Bill Clinton guy, he's down to a 4% approval rating. He was stupid enough to say like a year or two ago, I will not run for re-election if the unemployment rate is over 10%. Well, guess what? It's 10.5% and going up right now. So she's probably going to run. Well, he'll probably chicken out and run, but he's going to get his butt kicked. And as soon as she gets in, she's made it clear Frexit is what she wants. And then, of course, you have Catalonia. That's 25% of Spain, the wealthiest 25% of Spain. They elected a new pro-secession government last year after 95% of the people voted that they wanted secession, and then that government just 3 months ago voted to formally secede. And just 2 days after the Trump election, guess what? 80,000 Catalonians mobbed the streets and demanded that they do it now. I mean, if 25% of the United States seceded, that would be like California and then some seceding. So Spain, which is one of the worst fiscal miscreants in all of Europe, one of the pigs, is going to secede just as Italy is. Then you have Greece. I mean, look at the riots going on there. Greece didn't get any better. In fact, Greece might not even have a troika around to administer the bailouts that the people voted against last year. So they're going to default on their $400 billion of debt at some point, probably in the next 12 months. Guess who they owe all that money to, or the majority to? European banks, principally French banks, principally German banks like Deutsche Bank. Deutsche Bank is still there. They didn't get funded. They got a few $1 billion of hush money for a couple of months. They're going to collapse. Think of how much derivatives blew up just in the last week alone. And the way you're going to know that is when you see all of the dozens and dozens of hedge funds going out of business. I mean, I read today that the biggest reason the PPI plunged was asset management fees plunged. Just because everyone's pulling their money out of hedge funds. I also read that they're at an all-time low asset allocation to hedge funds for institutions because these guys have not figured out that the markets are rigged. But after last week, I'm sure they were all heavily leveraged, betting on Hillary Clinton, and they couldn't imagine either way that rates would surge and oil and copper would surge and the dollar would surge. I mean, everyone is losing money everywhere, and you're going to see it all come home to roost in 2017, if not sooner.
All right. Well, before we let you go, I need your thoughts on silver. I think since Trump was elected, we've seen silver gutted more than $2 an ounce, as everything else in the world seems to be going up in value to the degree that there's this crazy inflation taking place. They tell us through the markets, these manipulated paper markets, that your silver's worthless, folks. Is this just merely because the dollar has been skyrocketing?
Well, again, I disagree that everything's been going up. Last to go markets like the Dow have gone up, and in fact, tech stocks have gone down while the Dow has gone up because they are so supporting that one market. Most of the markets around the world, financial markets, have not gone up. But yes, I mean, copper and zinc and lead, this speculative Chinese lead surge. Of all the things in the world that are not going to do well in the short term and are not undersupplied, it's base metals. They're the polar opposite of silver, which, by the way, is the most diversely used industrial metal in the world. 3/4 of its use, of its production, goes to industrial use. So if you're going to speculate that there's a Trump fiscal stimulus plan, I mean, silver will do at least as well as those things. So again, the reason silver has been gutted is pure manipulation, just like the Dow going to a record level for no reason. They pushed gold and silver down. So you're starting to see a demand reaction. We're starting to see it at Miles Franklin. You're certainly seeing it around the world, particularly in India, where they ban cash. So people are selling out all the stores for any gold they can find. And you can imagine what's going on in China now with the PBOC devaluing the yuan to a new low today, a new all-time low peg today. And all these other places. So, of course, you're going to see this supply shortage just like we saw in 2008 and 11 and 13 and 15. Only this time it's not going to be the one that can be reversed because this is the end game coming for the entire monetary system. You're going to see currency crashes in the coming 12 months like no one even can imagine how bad it's going to be. And of course, silver is probably the most undervalued asset on the planet. It will run out just like it always runs out in these situations. And, if you live overseas right now, you're watching precious metal prices soar. Over here, you have the chance of a lifetime, the chance of an absolute lifetime to be purchasing at these ridiculous prices because it's not long. You look at how the mining shares are doing. They're already being discounted at the collapse in earnings and balance sheets and reserves that happened last time around. Only this time they're starting from a much weaker base. So again, this industry is dying, supply is drying up, and demand has never been higher at a time where money printing and currency devaluation has never been stronger and is just getting started.
All right, I'm going to leave you with this, guys. Listen to this. This is from my friend Lewis from Small Gold. Andy, you'll appreciate this, because if we imagine our friends, neighbors, and colleagues who really aren't following this stuff and don't own any precious metals and believe everything the government tells them, for the most part. Lewis writes, I've been getting comments and emails supporting India's cash ban to the effect that something had to be done to stop corruption. Seems people are willing to give up liberty for safety, convenience, and allow governments to be heavy-handed everywhere if it is in the name of for your children or to fight corruption or to fight terrorism, end quote. To us, the cash ban seems so obviously outrageous, but it's not to others. Where are those others going to end up when they finally wake up and have no cash in hand because it's been banned and have no precious metals, Andy?
Well, first of all, I'd like to know who was emailed. I don't think anyone really believes that's true, and no one. It's not good. Ban on cash is not good for anyone. In India, almost everyone uses cash. Why would that be good for them? Most people don't even have a bank account. That just makes their life more difficult, and it just puts the government's more in control, and it makes the ability to transact business more difficult. Especially because look, they're getting rid of high denomination bills that equate to $7 and $15. I hardly believe that there's a big enough black economy in India to end the government's tax revenues over $7 and $15 bills. No, the ban on cash is a very, very bad thing, and it symbolizes what's coming. And remember, all it takes, when you see these things going on, it's the telltale sign that the government is collapsing. That's why India is doing it. Narendra Modi is a consummate evil. He was just like we had Obama come in to replace the neocons. Modi replaced the guy who everyone thought was so horrible, and it turns out he's just as horrible. So again, I can assure you that the financial apartheid. I wrote years ago an article called "The World's Worst Government," and everyone, I challenged people to guess what I was talking about, and everyone had all these ideas, these third world countries, and they said, oh, the United States. I said, no, it's India. These guys are self-destructing themselves. They have a nation of 1.5 billion people who don't trust paper money, and they're acting like the Federal Reserve. And the rupee, as I look at it, I'm looking right now, it's crashing to almost a new all-time low. They banned the cash. The price of gold in India is over $2,000 right now. I mean, these people are going to have violent revolutions over there, especially as the global economy continues to crash. And again, any kind of sign of weakness in financial markets, and here it doesn't even matter if the Dow goes down. It's quite clear that just the surging dollar or plunging bond markets will be enough for these draconian things to get announced over here. Which are, confiscation of IRAs, the war on cash, banning cash, all kinds of things that will make your life terrible and make the social and political climate unstable. And look, if you have gold and silver, I mean, you're certainly going to survive. You got a chance to even thrive, and you probably will, unless we get to the worst case scenario. So I mean, people, I can't imagine, I can't comprehend how anyone could keep a single dollar in a bank, given what's going on around the world.
All right, guys. The first time I ever bought precious metals, I bought 10 10-ounce bars of silver from Miles Franklin. Andy, tell them how they can get a hold of you guys.
Yes, 800-822-8080. Remember, it's a very, very, generally speaking, not transparent business. And we've been around 27 years without a single complaint from anyone. A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Minnesota, our home state, is the only state in the union that regulates dealers. Everyone should listen to the new podcast I did with our president and co-founder Andy Schekman last week, talking about not just the bullion market but our new product offerings. We have an amazing new private safe deposit box storage program in Toronto and Vancouver. We now have online purchasing. Again, 800-822-8080. I write every day for free and do all these podcasts at milesfranklin.com, or you can email me at ahoffman@milesfranklin.com.
All right, guys. Well, you heard it right from the horse's mouth. Andy Hoffman from Miles Franklin. Thank you, Andy.
You're very welcome.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. And stay tuned. I have some very powerful interviews coming up in the next several days. Thanks for visiting us at sgtreport.com. Real news 24/7.